Imagine waking up every morning and spending the first few minutes of your day visualizing your own death in increasingly brutal ways. Arrows piercing your body, gigantic waves sweeping you away, lightning carbonizing you. This isn't psychological torture. It was the daily ritual of the most lethal samurai in history, and it was precisely this meditation technique that transformed ordinary warriors into unstoppable war machines, capable of facing death without blinking. The secret that allowed the samurai to be fearless is about to be revealed. Every day, without exception, even before sunrise, the most feared samurai of feudal Japan practiced a ritual that most people would consider pure insanity. Seated in the lotus position, with their spines erect and eyes half closed, they dedicated the first moments of the day to a practice that defied all human survival instincts, meditating on their own death. And we're not talking about a gentle philosophical reflection on mortality. We're talking about visualizing, in vivid and bloody detail, every possible way to die in combat. This was zazen combined with death meditation, a technique so powerful that it literally reprogrammed the warrior's brains to eliminate fear. The book Hagakure, written in the early 1700s by the samurai Yamamoto Tsunetomo, documents this practice with chilling precision. Tsunetomo was clear and direct. Meditation on inevitable death should be performed daily, every day. When body and mind are at peace, you should meditate on being torn apart by arrows, rifles, spears, and swords, being carried away by raging waves, being thrown into the midst of a great fire, being struck by lightning, being shaken to death by an earthquake, falling from cliffs 1,000 feet high, dying of illness or committing seppuku for the death of your master. And every day, without fail, consider yourself already dead. This was not a metaphor. It was a mental training protocol followed religiously. But why on earth would anyone do that? The answer lies in modern neuroscience. When you repeatedly visualize a scenario, your brain begins to treat it as a real experience. The samurai understood this centuries before science confirmed it. By mentally confronting death every day, they desensitized the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for the fear response. It was a form of self-applied exposure therapy. Modern studies from Yale University confirm that the loss of prefrontal cortex function only occurs when we feel out of control. By visualizing the worst possibilities daily, the samurai gained a sense of control over the uncontrollable. They had already died 1,000 times in their minds. When real death approached on the battlefield, it was nothing new. It was just another repetition of something they had already experienced countless times. But death meditation was only the beginning. The samurai developed something even more extraordinary called mushin, which literally means mind without mind. Mushin is not an empty mind, as many mistakenly interpret it. It is a state of fluid consciousness where action happens without interference from conscious thought. Imagine a river. The water is not empty, it simply flows without obstacles. Similarly, the mind in a state of mushin continues processing information and making decisions, but without the paralysis of excessive analysis. In combat, a samurai in a state of mushin did not think about which move to make next. His body simply reacted perfectly, based on years of muscular training so deep that the techniques were engraved at the subcortical level of the brain. Modern science calls this transient hypofrontality. During states of intense flow, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-awareness and critical thinking, drastically reduces its activity. This allows decisions to be based on the instinctive subconscious, which processes information thousands of times faster than conscious thought. Researchers have found that in mushin states, activity in the prefrontal cortex decreases so much that athletes and fighters report a sensation of dilated time and expanded awareness. The samurai wasn't fighting you. His body simply responded to your movements with surgical precision, without hesitation, without doubt, without fear. It was like facing a perfect extension of pure physics, without the delay of human mental processing. But achieving mushin required something beyond seated meditation. Samurai trained through brutal repetition. In Kenjutsu, they practiced the same sword cut 10,000 times, 20,000 times, until the movement transcended muscle memory and became part of the brain's permanent neural structure. During intensive training called Kakari Geiko, they attacked the master relentlessly to the point of absolute exhaustion. When the body reached its limit and the lungs burned, when the arms weighed like lead and the mind gave up on planning strategies, something extraordinary happened. The inner voice fell silent. The body took control. And for the first time, the practitioner experienced a glimpse of Mushin. It was in this moment of total surrender that the door opened. And there's more. Samurai didn't just meditate on abstract death. From childhood, they were taken to cemeteries at night. They were forced to watch public executions. They inspected the severed heads of criminals. And most disturbingly, they had to leave their personal mark on these horrific places as proof that they had been there. This wasn't gratuitous sadism. It was systematic psychological conditioning. The goal was simple: to completely remove the instinctive fear of death and horror. A child repeatedly exposed to these stimuli develops a completely different emotional response than someone protected from these realities. The brain adapts. What would be traumatic for an ordinary person became just another aspect of reality for the young samurai. Now think about this. What if you applied even a fraction of that mindset to your life? The samurai proved that fear is programmable, and therefore unprogrammable. Miyamoto Musashi, considered the greatest swordsman who ever lived, undefeated in over 60 deadly duels, spent the last years of his life in a cave called Reigando. There, he meditated daily and wrote his legendary treatise, The Book of Five Rings. Musashi was not just a brutal fighter. He was a master of multiple arts: painting, calligraphy, poetry, all the result of a mind trained to focus without distraction. Before dying, he practiced meditation on the decomposition of the body, visualizing in detail the process of death and physical decay. When his time finally came at age 62, he stood up, knelt on one knee, straightened his back and held his sword, and he died in that position. This was the mindset of someone who had faced death so many times mentally that when it truly came, it was just another moment to be lived with absolute dignity. Another fascinating aspect was the concept of living as if already dead. This didn't mean giving up on life, it meant the radical opposite. If you already consider yourself dead, then every moment you are still alive is an unexpected bonus. There is nothing to lose. There is no reason to hesitate. There is no room for regret or paralysis by analysis. You act with total commitment because you have already accepted the worst possible outcome. The samurai who adopted this mentality became the most dangerous warriors on the battlefield, not because they were aggressive or reckless, but because they were completely detached from the outcome. They executed each action with technical perfection, without the weight of anxiety about consequences. The Zen masters who trained the samurai used koans, paradoxical puzzles that forced the mind to transcend linear logic. Questions like, what does clapping sound like, have no logical answer. That's precisely the point. The purpose was to break the habitual thought cycle and force the mind to operate at a different level of consciousness. A samurai who could solve a koan demonstrated that his mind had achieved the flexibility necessary to operate beyond the limitations of dualistic thinking. In combat, this translated into the ability to see opportunities where others saw only threats, to find solutions where others saw only problems. Breathing was another crucial tool. Samurai practiced specific breathing control techniques that had measurable effects on the nervous system. Slow, deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for the relaxation response. In situations of extreme stress, when the sympathetic nervous system triggers the fight or flight response, the ability to consciously activate the parasympathetic system through breathing was the difference between clear thinking and panic. Samurai knew that in battle, the one who remains calm wins. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but the calmest. And calmness was trainable through conscious breathing, combined with daily meditation. There was also the concept of zanshin, remnant spirit, or residual consciousness. Zanshin is the relaxed state of alertness that remains after an action is completed. A samurai who finished a cut did not relax completely. He maintained expanded awareness, ready to react to the next attack. It was like a calligrapher holding their position after the last brushstroke, allowing the energy of the movement to fully complete itself. Zanshin connected the end of one moment to the beginning of the next, without gaps of vulnerability. It was the difference between a master and an amateur. The amateur relaxes after executing a technique. The master remains in a state of fluid readiness, without tension, but without carelessness. The still mind, or fudoshin, was another pillar of samurai mental training. It doesn't mean a rigid or stubborn mind. It means a mind that remains calm and centered regardless of external chaos. Like a mountain that remains unshaken while storms pass, fudoshin was developed through direct confrontation with high-stress situations. In Iaido, the art of drawing the sword, a single lapse in concentration ruined everything. Constant practice under this pressure forged a mind that did not waver in the face of adversity. The samurai learned that emotions like anger, fear, and excitement were merely temporary disturbances on the surface of the mind. Deep down, the mind remained calm, like deep water unaffected by surface waves. The samurai also understood that mental training was not an isolated event. It was a way of life. The master-disciple relationship was fundamental. Knowledge was not transmitted solely through physical techniques. It was passed on through stories, parables, and lived examples. The master modeled the mindset that the student should develop. By observing how the master dealt with challenges, how he made decisions, how he reacted under pressure, the student absorbed not only technical knowledge but lived wisdom. This type of learning cannot be obtained from books. It requires presence, observation, and humble submission to the process of transformation. And here's the most impressive thing: it all works. The United States Navy dramatically increased the success rate of Navy SEALs when it began teaching psychological techniques to gain a sense of control, techniques based on the same principles that samurai used centuries ago. Visualization, breath control, gradual exposure to stress, all of these have been proven to improve performance under pressure. Modern science has validated what the samurai discovered through centuries of practical experimentation. Fear is not destiny. It is a conditioned response that can be reconditioned through systematic training. If you enjoyed discovering how samurai used meditation to become fearless, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more fascinating facts about the minds and training of history's most lethal warriors.